What's up, everyone? So this is what we're doing today. We are going to go pick up some OEM 5-lug wheels for the FC. I ordered some Steelies, which the fitment was amazing on. I'll post photos here probably. But they did not clear the FD 4 pistons in the front of my car. So I have to try and get in contact with the seller of the Steelies because I did order them new, and hopefully ship them back to the manufacturer, get my money back. They fit in the rear, but they're not going to clear the 4 pistons, which is my bad. I'm broke, so I always own cheap cars with sliding brake calipers. Never had fancy 4 piston calipers on my car. So yeah, Steelies do not fit. But I'm hoping these stock FC 5-lug alloys will clear the FD brakes, which I think they should based off of what I read. Even if they don't, they're so cheap, I don't mind buying like a 10mm slip-on spacer for it. We've got some stock wheels on the car. I bought these spacers on eBay. They're really nice, and the cool thing about them is they are the correct center bore. Scratch them with my knife when I'm packing them. But anyways, I'm gonna run the stock wheels with a spacer behind them for now, because 16-inch tires are just way cheaper. So this will be like my everyday setup. I sold the 17s that I had on here because they just didn't fit properly. As for the KBD kit, I took it to a body shop around the corner and they tossed this rear bumper in for one seat cycle as well as the side skirt, and it straightened out quite a bit. Now they did it absolutely for free, just putting it in the corner of their paint booth. So it's not like 100% perfect. But I mean, it was free, so I don't expect it to be perfect. They got it a lot straighter than it was, just from the heat in the paint booth. So I dropped off the front bumper and the other side skirt, and they're gonna do that next. So this hub, the center bore extends out 2 centimeters. And where this spacer tapers back to this 59mm bore is not 2 centimeters deep. Now I think I can probably take away some material from the inside. So what I'm probably going to do is bring these to a machine shop and ask them if they can take out this inner little taper a little bit more without removing so much material that it becomes an issue. But that's unfortunate. So here on the rear, you can see that center bore is a lot shallower, so let's see if this works. Yes, that's absolutely perfect. Nice. Okay, so at least 2 of them will work. Okay, here you can see the difference from the 15mm spacers. So they look really good, actually. It'll look sick with the body kit. Gotta fix up the rims. So the fronts, we'll have to figure something out with the front, unfortunately. I do have a carbide bit that I'm going to use to finish these welds. I could try and use that, but I don't think I want to mess with the spacers because I wouldn't want to remove material in like a not so uniform manner. So this, while we're up at the garage here, this Passport has a seized motor. So I pulled the plug. We're going to try and get the engine unstuck. It's just not kicking over right now. But that's what we're working on a little bit right now before we put her on the Mazda. Just put a bit of oil in it because there was no oil sitting in the crankcase. If we could get this motor unstuck, that would be really cool. Because this bike is all original. It'd be a shame to replace the engine. How's PB Blaster going, Michaela? All I read online was just to continue soaking it.
Oh, help, help.
What happened?
Okay.
Oh. This bike is so cute.
Wait, no, I didn't get enough in here.
So we got this aluminum convertible hood. We're going to toss on the Mazda. We're going to take off my crummy steel hood here. So that's pretty exciting. So it's just 4 bolts. And then we'll toss that on. Okay, so here we have the ePowerSteering kit for the FC. I am extremely weak, and this car has manual steering, so I wanted as straightforward as possible of a electric power steering conversion. So here's kind of what it comes with. This is the unit, I believe, out of a Saturn or some kind of GM car. And I am coming into this with zero prior knowledge of how to install this, but it looks very straightforward. It's super nice. This is the steering ECU box, and this should all adapt onto the car as if it was OEM and be pretty easy to install. So before I assemble any of this stuff, I'm going to start taking apart the interior a little bit on the FC to get a clearer view of what I'm working with. So here's a look at what we're working with under the dash here. There was some HVAC stuff that I had to get out of the way. I still might have to shuffle some things around, but also took the wheel off to make things easier. And it is pretty tight under here. So we'll see how everything mounts up, but yeah, pretty straightforward. Obviously, you would ideally be labeling the bolts that come out. Pretty much every bolt in this car is just like a universal self-tapper from like Home Hardware. So in my particular case, doesn't matter. But you might want to be a little more specific about what bolts are coming from where, or what screws, I should say. When it comes to stripping this all down, probably the only tricky part is once you try and remove your ignition barrel, you're going to notice these 2 screws don't have any kind of top to them. They're just like a flat top. So I have a little Dremel with a steel cutting bit on it, and I took the cluster surround off just to give myself lots of room, and I cut into the top to slot this fastener out. So that's the first little tricky part that I've encountered thus far. Okay, so the steering column is out. The next most challenging thing would be this U-joint here, because, you know, this is a 40-year-old car, so obviously this shaft up here was seized in its place, but we got it out. And here's what the new one looks like. So now we gotta start assembling our new kit. Okay guys, so I got the steering column in, just mocked up, but as you can see here, we have the output trying to make to the female end of the rest of the column. Now I'm gonna have to loosen the rack and back it out just a little bit so that I can slip this U-joint onto the spline, which honestly shouldn't be that hard. It's just that this assembly is very heavy. So looking under here, I know it's dark, but you can see up and under the dash, we have the whole motor tucked in, and it fits super nice. So I'll have to lower this down in a little bit to attach my ignition barrel anyways. And once I do that, I might get a second set of hands to help me slip that U-joint on. So I got the steering system hooked up, and I've just been testing it out with the wheel slipped on here to the splines. One thing I would remember is to have make sure your ignition barrel lines up with the little indent on the steering column, so that when your key isn't turned, your steering lock still functions. And then when you turn the key, it unlocks. So you can see that works. And then up here on the ignition barrel, I took out the original fasteners, which didn't have any head on them. I had to grind that slot to unscrew them, and I replaced them with these Allen bolts. Now, I had to cut one of them down because I didn't have two identical ones. But the Allen bolts fit inside this upper half of the assembly, and it just tightens on to the column. And then underneath here, I ended up undoing the motor from the lower part of the column after just mocking this up, and then kind of disassembling this so that I could reassemble it under the car and make sure all the steering was aligned properly so that this ignition barrel would properly engage on that little spline there. And it just takes a little bit of finagling around to get everything kind of neat and tidy, but it really isn't that heavy of an assembly. It's just kind of awkward because you're like on your back and stuff, and it's like doing stuff under the dashboard is never fun because it's hard on your back. So if this is something you guys are planning to do on your own FC, it's very dark under here, but I've just run these little spade connectors as an extension from the driver footwell fuse panel. And the control module for the ePowerSteering kit requires a 10 amp switched power source. In other words, a power source that is only active when the key is in the ignition. So the main power cable is drawing power from the battery, but in order for the control module to turn on, you have to have a switched power source. And that, for me, is the 10 amp cigar fuse. You can see that. I just kind of got it hooked up here to these mock-up wires to make it easier. And then I still have to find a ground. So right now the ground is grounding directly to the battery, but there should be multiple options for ground locations under the dashboard here. And where I'm gonna be mounting the control module is under the dash in here. And we'll get a better idea of that once I have it mounted. There are actually two studs where this stock mount will line up to, but they're a little bit too close together. So I took a Dremel and I just widened one hole, kind of slotted it so that this can slide back and forth so that it can meet the correct mounting position. Okay, so the wiring for the electric power steering kit is complete, basically. Just need to tidy things up a little bit. Kind of a rat's nest right now. But you can see here is the electric power steering module. So it sits on two bolts, one of which I have the ground for the controller here wired to. You can hear that relay. That's the power steering assist coming on. And all the way clockwise is full assist. In here, you can see where the power cables are routing to the control module. Now it's really cramped in here. So what I want to do is go back in and just kind of tuck these wires in a little bit better, zip tie them, you know, secure them and everything. But that wraps it up for the electric power steering conversion from ePowerSteering.com. All in all, that was very easy. The fact that you don't have to plumb anything up, the fact that this is going into a car with a manual rack, like, just way less involved. And it gets you really, really good power steering. Like, that's, I think, on full assist. So especially if you were running like a big tire, like a, you know, 245 or whatever. I'm not sure how wide you can fit on these cars up front, but this would make your life a lot better. Sorry I haven't uploaded in a while. This was a lot of work to get done on the FC. I'm really stoked to like not be breaking my arms every time I need to park the car. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. That was a lot of work, but not too difficult. Definitely recommend it to you if you guys are thinking about that kit. I'm not sponsored or affiliated with ePowerSteering in any way, but I do really like the product. And I did call them at one point to ask for help. Turned out I had the positive hooked up to the negative and the negative hooked up to the positive. So it was not a super complicated problem, just a mistake on my part, but these things happen. But yeah, really good kit. I will see you next time. That wraps up another bunch of work on the FC, but I've been putting it off and putting it off. We really need to get the body kit done. I mean, it shouldn't be too hard because, like, it has been heated up once already. I think it could use a little bit more heat. But it really shouldn't be too hard because the body kit has already gone through a heat cycle and it already has most of its shape. And I want to try and figure out the exhaust because it's going to need to move down a couple of inches to line up the tip to the new rear bumper. I also got a couple days ago in the mail a package from Energy Suspension, which is just good to have, like, all the bushings and stuff for the car. There's a couple of bushings that still are pretty old and need to be replaced. So I'll replace them with poly bushings. Okay, bye. Goodbye.